Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something ancient, sacred, and absolutely unforgiving. Life inside the belly of Jonah's whale, not the cute children's story with a friendly whale and a cozy stomach. The raw, terrifying reality of what it might have been like to spend 3 days and 3 nights trapped in the digestive system of a massive sea creature. This isn't the sanitized Sunday school version where everything works out nicely. This is the biological nightmare that the prophet Jonah actually survived through divine intervention. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us on this spiritual journey across time zones and continents. Now, turn off all the lights. The screen will also dim in a moment to help you relax as you listen to tonight's story. Let's ease into our biblical journey together. You're about to experience something that no human being should ever survive. Something so alien, so impossible, that it could only happen through direct divine intervention. Tonight, you're not just hearing about Jonah's experience, you're living it. Now you're in the ancient Mediterranean, roughly 760 BCE. The sun beats down mercilessly on weathered wooden planks beneath your sandaled feet. You're not on a modern cruise ship with safety equipment, GPS and climate control. You're Jonah, son of Amittai, and you're running from God himself on a Phoenician merchant vessel bound for Tarshish. The ship rocks beneath you with the natural rhythm of the sea, but there's something different in the air today. Something wrong. The experienced sailors around you speak in hushed tones in languages you barely understand. Phoenician Aramaic, maybe some Egyptian dialect. These aren't weekend boaters. These are men who've spent their entire lives reading the moods of the Mediterranean, and they're nervous. The smell hits you first. Salt spray mixed with tar used to seal the ship's joints. Dried fish hanging in nets. Unwashed bodies packed too close together. The pungent aroma of whatever cargo fills the hold below your feet. Spices, maybe. Precious metals. Trade goods that make these dangerous voyages profitable enough to risk your life for. But underneath all those familiar sea smells, there's something else. Something electric in the air that makes the hair on your arms stand up. The kind of atmospheric pressure that comes before storms, but different. Heavier, more intentional. You've been running for days now. Running from the voice that came to you in Israel, clear as your own thoughts, but undeniably foreign. Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it, for their evil has come up before me. Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, the most brutal empire the world has ever known. The place where prophets go to die horrible deaths. The very name Nineveh makes your stomach turn. You've heard the stories. Everyone in Israel has heard the stories. Assyrian cruelty isn't just warfare, it's art. They don't simply kill their enemies, they impale them on stakes and leave them to die slowly in the sun. They skin people alive and hang the flesh on city walls as decoration. They force children to watch their parents being tortured, then sell the children into slavery. This is what passes for diplomacy in the Assyrian Empire, and God wants you to walk into their capital city and tell them they're sinful. You, a Hebrew prophet in Nineveh, telling the most violent people on earth that they need to repent or face divine judgment. It's not just a death sentence, it's a death sentence with torture as the appetizer. So you ran, like any sensible person would run, like any human being with basic survival instincts would run. You took what silver you had saved, what few possessions could be converted to travel money, made your way down to the port city of Joppa, and bought passage on the first ship heading as far from Nineveh as possible. The journey to Joppa alone took 2 days of walking through terrain that bakes under the Palestinian sun during the day and turns cold at night. Your feet develop blisters from the unfamiliar rocky roads. Your water runs low. Your food runs out. But still you keep walking, driven by the certainty that anywhere is better than Nineveh. Joppa assaults your senses with its foreignness. This isn't the quiet Hebrew community where everyone knows your family. This is an international port where Egyptian merchants argue with Phoenician captains, while Greek traders examine goods they can't pronounce. The harbour stinks of fish guts and human waste, tar and seawater, exotic spices and rotting cargo. Ships from a dozen nations crowd the waterfront, their crews speaking languages that sound like gibberish to your Hebrew, trained ears. You wander the docks feeling completely out of place. Finding passage west isn't difficult. Finding passage you can afford is harder. These Phoenician captains know desperation when they see it. You end up paying far more than the journey is worth to secure space on a vessel bound for Tarshish, somewhere in the far western Mediterranean, anywhere but where God wanted you to go. The wind picks up suddenly, and the ship lurches sideways. Not the gentle roll you've grown accustomed to over the past day, but a violent twist that sends cargo sliding across the deck. The sailors scramble, their casual conversation replaced by urgent shouts. Ropes crack in the wind like whips. The sail, stretched tight moments before, now flaps and strains against its moorings with sounds like thunder. The change happens with supernatural speed. One moment you're sailing on relatively calm seas under a clear sky. The next you're surrounded by clouds that seem to boil up from nowhere. These aren't normal weather patterns. Storms build over hours, sometimes days. This tempest materializes like it's been summoned. Within minutes, the gentle swells become rolling hills of water. Within an hour, they become moving mountains that dwarf the ship and make you feel like an insect clinging to a piece of bark. The ship climbs each wave like a wooden toy in the hands of an angry child, pauses sickeningly at the crest, where you can see the full scope of the chaos surrounding you, then plunges down the other side into valleys of churning foam that threaten to swallow the vessel entirely. Your stomach lurches with each descent, not just from the motion, but from the growing certainty that this isn't coincidence. Your hands grip whatever solid surface you can find until your knuckles turn white and your palms bleed from splinters. The deck beneath your feet, worn smooth by years of Mediterranean voyages, becomes treacherous with seawater and whatever cargo has broken loose from its lashings. Lightning begins to fork across the sky in patterns that seem almost geometrical, as if someone is deliberately drawing lines of fire from cloud to cloud. The thunder doesn't rumble, it cracks like the world is splitting open. Each flash illuminates waves that tower impossibly high above the ship, walls of water that should crush any vessel foolish enough to challenge them. But somehow, the ship survives each encounter, not through superior construction or skillful seamanship, though the crew fights valiantly to keep their vessel afloat. The ship survives because something wants it to survive long enough for this drama to play out completely, long enough for the crew to understand exactly what's happening and why. The temperature drops with each gust of wind, transforming the warm Mediterranean air into something that bites through your robes and chills you to the bone. The spray from each wave carries an electric charge that makes your skin tingle and your hair stand on end. This isn't just weather, this is the atmosphere of divine judgment, the kind of storm that accompanies theophanies in the sacred texts. You think of Moses on Mount Sinai, surrounded by thunder and lightning. You think of Elijah on Mount Horeb, waiting for God's voice in earthquake and wind and fire. But those were encounters between God and his chosen servants. This is divine wrath pursuing a runaway prophet, and everyone else on this ship is caught in the crossfire. This isn't a normal storm. You know storms. You've lived through the violent weather that sweeps across Israel during the rainy season. But this feels different. personal, targeted, like the sea itself has awakened with a specific purpose, and that purpose involves destroying this particular ship with you on it. The sailors work frantically, their movements coordinated by years of experience with Mediterranean weather. But you can see the fear in their eyes. These men have survived storms that would terrify land dwellers, and they're genuinely afraid. The captain, a weather-beaten Phoenician with arms like tree trunks, keeps glancing at the sky and muttering prayers to gods whose names you don't recognize. Water crashes over the bow in sheets, soaking everything and everyone on deck. The ship's cargo, carefully secured just hours ago, breaks loose and slides dangerously with each roll. One of the crew narrowly avoids being crushed by a shifting amphora the size of a grown man. Others work desperately to throw the heaviest items overboard, sacrificing valuable cargo to keep the ship from capsizing. But you know the truth that they haven't figured out yet. This storm isn't random. It's not just bad weather or seasonal atmospheric disturbance. This tempest exists because you're on this ship. The God of Israel, the God who created the seas and commands the winds, has sent this supernatural storm specifically to get your attention. The irony isn't lost on you. You're trying to flee from the presence of the Lord by crossing his own creation. You're attempting to escape the God who made the very waters you're sailing on, using the wind he controls to fill your sails. It's like trying to hide from someone by locking yourself in their house. The crew draws lots to determine whose sin has brought this calamity upon them. Ancient people understand something modern humans have forgotten. Supernatural storms don't just happen. Divine wrath has specific targets. Someone on this ship has angered the gods, and whoever that someone is, they need to be identified quickly before everyone dies. The lots fall on you. Of course they do. You're not surprised. In fact, you're almost relieved. The weight of running from God has been crushing you for days. The constant looking over your shoulder, the persistent sense that you can't really escape, the growing certainty that this whole endeavor is futile. What have you done? The captain demands, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. Who are you? Where do you come from? What is your occupation? What people are you from? You tell them everything. You're a Hebrew. You worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. You're running from his presence because he commanded you to go to Nineveh, and you refused. This storm exists because of your disobedience. The fear in their eyes deepens, but it changes quality. Before, they were afraid of dying in a storm. Now they're afraid of being caught in the crossfire between a prophet and his God. They understand immediately that they're dealing with powers far beyond anything in their experience. What shall we do to you, that the sea may quiet down for us? They ask. You know the answer before they finish the question. You've known it since the storm began, maybe since you first set foot on their ship. There's only one way this ends. Only one way to save these innocent men who've been caught up in your rebellion. Pick me up and hurl me into the sea. You tell them. Then the sea will quiet down for you. For I know it is because of me that this great tempest has come upon you. They refuse at first. These are good men, despite being pagans. They try everything else they can think of. They row harder, fighting against waves that dwarf their vessel. They throw more cargo overboard. They pray to their own gods, begging for mercy they don't understand. But the storm only grows stronger. Waves now tower above the ship like liquid cliffs. The wind screams with a voice that seems almost conscious, almost angry. Water pours over the sides faster than they can bail it out. The ship lists dangerously to one side, then the other, threatening to roll completely over. Finally, they have no choice. They pray to your God, asking forgiveness for what they're about to do. They pick you up, your arms and legs struggling instinctively against their grip. even though your mind has accepted this fate. For just a moment, you hang suspended above the churning water, feeling the spray sting your face and the wind tear at your robes. Then they let you go. The fall seems to last forever and no time at all. One moment you're looking down at water that moves like a living thing, dark and angry and hungry. The next you're crashing into it with an impact that drives all the air from your lungs and sends shock waves through every bone in your body. The Mediterranean in storm season is shockingly cold, a temperature that immediately starts the process of shutting down your body's non-essential functions. The impact stuns you momentarily. Your vision fills with bubbles and churning foam as you're driven deep beneath the surface. The noise of the storm, deafening moments before, is suddenly muffled and distant. Down here, the primary sound is your own heartbeat pounding in your ears. You sink fast. Your robes, heavy with water, drag you down like anchors. Every fold of fabric becomes a trap for seawater, adding weight that pulls you deeper into the abyss. Your sandals slip off your feet and disappear into the darkness below. The surface above you quickly disappears into a faint suggestion of light, then into complete darkness. The pressure in your ears builds until it feels like your head might explode. Your lungs burn with the need for air, but there's no air to be found at these depths. Your body instinctively tries to swim upward, but you're too deep, too weighted down, too exhausted. Your arms and legs move sluggishly through the water, fighting against ropes that tangle around your limbs. Each stroke upward is negated by the relentless downward pull of your waterlogged clothing and the overwhelming weight of the sea. Panic sets in as your oxygen-starved brain begins to malfunction. You can't tell which way is up anymore. The darkness is complete, disorienting, alien. You might be swimming toward the surface or deeper into the abyss. No reference points, no landmarks, just endless black water pressing in from all directions. Your lungs begin to convulse, demanding air that doesn't exist. The burning in your chest intensifies until it feels like liquid fire. Your vision begins to tunnel as your brain shuts down non-essential functions to conserve what little oxygen remains. This is where you're supposed to die. This is where the story of Jonah, the prophet, should end, in the crushing depths of the Mediterranean Sea. Your rebellion against God should cost you everything, including your life. But something moves in the darkness below you. Something massive. Something that displaces water in volumes you can feel against your sinking body even through your panic. At first, it's just a deeper shadow in the impenetrable black water. Then it's a presence you can sense rather than see, something huge rising from depths that no human eye has ever penetrated. The pressure waves from something incredibly large, moving through the water push against you from below. You feel the displacement of water as massive fins cut through the sea around you. Whatever this creature is, it's larger than anything that should exist in nature. Larger than any whale described in sailors' tales. Larger than any sea monster from the oldest stories. You continue to sink, your consciousness starting to fade from lack of oxygen, your thoughts becoming fragmented and strange, and that's when you see it. Not clearly, because there's no light at these depths, but you sense it with some primitive part of your brain that recognizes the presence of predators, even in complete darkness. A mouth opening in the blackness beneath you, not opening to feed in the violent, desperate way of predators hunting prey, but opening to receive. Opening with purpose. Opening with what seems almost like intention, almost like intelligence, almost like divine appointment. A mouth larger than any creature that should exist, lined with what might be teeth, or might be baleen, or might be something else entirely. The opening creates a cavern in the water that could easily hold a small building, lined with ridges and structures that catch what little light filters down from the storm-tossed surface far above. The realization hits you with perfect, terrible clarity, cutting through your oxygen, starved panic like a blade. This isn't a random encounter with some deep sea predator hunting in the depths. This creature didn't just happen to be swimming through this exact patch of Mediterranean water at the exact moment you were thrown overboard. This massive inhabitant of the deep has been sent, prepared, positioned here by the same God you've been running from, just like the storm was sent specifically to pursue this ship because you were on it, just like the lots fell on you specifically when the crew cast them to determine whose sin had brought calamity upon them. Just like every element of this impossible situation has been orchestrated by divine providence, this creature has been appointed for this moment, for this purpose, for this salvation that looks exactly like death. The mouth engulfs you without violence, without the crushing bite you might expect from a predator. Instead, you're swept inside by a current of water that seems almost gentle, drawn into a space that defies every assumption about the insides of living creatures. The transition happens quickly. One moment you're sinking through empty ocean. The next you're being carried along by rushing water through what feels like a living tunnel. The walls around you pulse with the creature's heartbeat, a rhythm so deep you feel it in your bones. The water tastes different now. Not just seawater, but something organic alive. As you tumble through this biological corridor, your lungs finally give up their attempt to hold onto air that no longer exists. Water rushes into your throat, into your chest, and by every law of nature, this should be the moment of your death. But somehow, impossibly, you don't die. The water in your lungs doesn't feel like drowning. It feels like breathing something thicker than air. Your body accepts it, processes it, extracts whatever life-giving properties you need. The biological impossibility of breathing liquid becomes just another miracle in a situation that has already transcended every natural law. The last thing you see with anything approaching normal vision is the faint outline of what might be a throat ridged with muscle and cartilage, disappearing into complete darkness ahead of you. Massive structures that could be ribs or support beams arch overhead, creating a vaulted ceiling that puts you in mind of the greatest temples, but temples made of living flesh instead of hewn stone. The last thing you feel with normal sensation is water rushing past you as you're carried deeper into this living cave, deeper into an environment that shouldn't exist, deeper into a space that has become your entire world. The current that carries you feels controlled, purposeful, as if even the creature's digestive processes are being directed by a will greater than animal instinct. The last coherent thought you have before your mind surrenders to the impossibility of your situation is the stunned realization that you're still conscious, still breathing somehow, still existing as a living being in a place where life should be impossible. Still protected by the same divine power that you've been running from, even here in the belly of the beast that has swallowed you whole. Then everything goes black, and you tumble through liquid darkness into the most alien environment any human being has ever experienced. You're falling through the interior of a creature so large that its digestive system has become your entire world. A world without light, without familiar sounds, without any reference point for up or down or anything that makes sense. You're inside the belly of a great fish, prepared by God Himself to save you from drowning and to teach you lessons that can only be learned in the most impossible classroom imaginable. This is where your real education begins. This is where the running stops and the learning starts. In the crushing darkness, surrounded by the sound of a heartbeat larger than thunder and the rush of biological processes happening on a scale beyond human comprehension, you realize that escaping from God isn't actually possible. Even here, even in this place that shouldn't exist, Even in this situation that defies every law of nature you understand, you're exactly where God wants you to be. The great fish swims deeper into the Mediterranean, carrying you in its belly toward a destiny you never could have imagined. 3 days and 3 nights stretch ahead of you in this biological prison that is somehow also a divine lifeboat. 3 days and 3 nights to learn what it means when you can't run any further. The water around you moves with the creature's breathing, and somehow, impossibly, you're breathing too. The last thing you see with anything approaching normal vision is the faint outline of what might be a throat, ridged with muscle and cartilage, disappearing into complete darkness ahead of you. Massive structures that could be ribs or support beams arch overhead, creating a vaulted ceiling that puts you in mind of the greatest temples, but temples made of living flesh instead of hewn stone. The last thing you feel with normal sensation is water rushing past you as you're carried deeper into this living cave, deeper into an environment that shouldn't exist, deeper into a space that has become your entire world. The current that carries you feels controlled, purposeful, as if even the creature's digestive processes are being directed by a will greater than animal instinct. The last coherent thought you have before your mind surrenders to the impossibility of your situation is the stunned realization that you're still conscious, still breathing somehow, still existing as a living being in a place where life should be impossible, still protected by the same divine power that you've been running from, even here in the belly of the beast that has swallowed you whole. Then everything goes black, and you tumble through liquid darkness into the most alien environment any human being has ever experienced. You're falling through the interior of a creature so large that its digestive system has become your entire world. A world without light, without familiar sounds, without any reference point for up or down or anything that makes sense. You're inside the belly of a great fish, prepared by God Himself to save you from drowning and to teach you lessons that can only be learned in the most impossible classroom imaginable. This is where your real education begins. This is where the running stops and the learning starts. In the crushing darkness, surrounded by the sound of a heartbeat larger than thunder and the rush of biological processes happening on a scale beyond human comprehension, you realize that escaping from God isn't actually possible. Even here, even in this place that shouldn't exist, even in this situation that defies every law of nature you understand, you're exactly where God wants you to be. The great fish swims deeper into the Mediterranean, carrying you in its belly toward a destiny you never could have imagined. 3 days and 3 nights stretch ahead of you in this biological prison that is somehow also a divine lifeboat. 3 days and 3 nights to learn what it means when you can't run any further. The water around you moves with the creature's breathing, and somehow, impossibly, you're breathing too. You wake up, if you can call it waking up, to the most complete darkness you've ever experienced. Not the darkness of a moonless night where your eyes eventually adjust and you can make out shapes and shadows. Not the darkness of a deep cave where a torch can push back the black and reveal familiar stone walls. This is the darkness of being inside another living being, where light has never existed and never will exist. Your first instinct is to reach out with your hands, to feel for something solid, something familiar, something that might give you a reference point for where you are and what's happening to you. But when you try to move your arms, the motion feels strange, sluggish, like you're moving through something thicker than water, but thinner than mud. The liquid you're suspended in has a consistency unlike anything you've ever encountered. It's not quite water, though it flows like water when you move through it. It's not quite oil, though it has a slickness that makes your skin feel coated when you touch it. There's an organic quality to it that speaks of life processes, of a biological environment that was never meant to sustain human existence. When you finally manage to extend your arms fully, your fingers encounter walls that pulse with a rhythm you recognize as the creature's heartbeat. These walls aren't rigid like stone or wood. They're soft, muscular, warm to the touch, and they contract and expand with a regularity that would be comforting if it weren't so alien. The texture feels like leather that's been soaked in warm water, supple and yielding, but unmistakably alive. The space you're in seems to be roughly spherical, though it's difficult to determine exact dimensions in complete darkness while suspended in this strange liquid. When you stretch out fully in any direction, you can touch the walls, but there's enough room to move around, to change position, to exist without feeling completely trapped. It's like being inside a water-filled chamber about the size of a small room, except this room is made of living tissue and exists inside another creature. The temperature is blood warm, maybe slightly warmer than your own body temperature. There's no chill here, no risk of hypothermia like there would be in normal seawater. Whatever biological processes are maintaining this environment, they're keeping it at exactly the temperature needed for human survival. It's almost as if this space was designed with you in mind, prepared specifically for your arrival. The sounds are unlike anything you've ever heard. The creature's heartbeat dominates everything, a deep, rhythmic pounding that you feel in your bones as much as you hear with your ears. Each beat sends vibrations through the liquid around you, through the walls of your living prison, through your own body. It's impossibly loud and impossibly slow. A heart the size of a small building beating at a pace that speaks of massive biological processes happening on a scale beyond human comprehension. Underneath the heartbeat, there are other sounds. The rush of blood through arteries larger than the columns of Solomon's temple. The groaning and shifting of massive muscles as the creature swims through the Mediterranean waters far above you. The churning and bubbling of digestive processes happening in chambers adjacent to yours. Occasionally, there are sounds that might be the creature's breathing, distant and muffled, but clearly involving the movement of volumes of air that dwarf anything a human lung could process. Your own breathing has become something you have to think about consciously. The liquid in your lungs feels strange, foreign, but somehow it's providing whatever your body needs to continue functioning. Each breath is an act of faith, a decision to trust in the miracle that's keeping you alive in a place where life should be impossible. The liquid has a faint taste, slightly salty like seawater, but with an organic undertone that reminds you that you're inside another living being. The smell, if you can call it a smell when you're breathing liquid instead of air, is complex and overwhelming. There's a marine quality to it, the scent of deep ocean water and sea life. But there's also something more intimate, more biological, the smell of blood and muscle, and the internal workings of a massive creature. It's not unpleasant exactly, but it's completely alien, a constant reminder that you're experiencing something no human being was ever meant to experience. As your senses begin to adjust to this impossible environment, you start to notice subtleties in your surroundings that weren't apparent at first. The walls around you aren't uniform. There are ridges and valleys, structures that might be organs or might be architectural features of the creature's internal anatomy. When you run your hands along these surfaces, you can feel different textures, different temperatures, different degrees of firmness. Some areas of the wall feel almost bone, hard, as if there are skeletal structures providing support for this internal chamber. Other areas are soft and yielding, muscle tissue that contracts rhythmically with the creature's movement. Still other areas feel different entirely, smooth and slick like the inside of a mouth, or rough and textured like the surface of a tongue. The liquid you're suspended in seems to circulate, though you can't detect any obvious current or flow. Sometimes it feels warmer, sometimes slightly cooler. Sometimes it seems thicker, sometimes more fluid. It's as if the creature's body is constantly adjusting the environment inside its belly, maintaining the precise conditions needed to keep you alive for reasons you can't begin to understand. You try to remember how you got here, and the memories come flooding back with perfect, terrible clarity. The ship, the storm, the crew throwing you overboard, the fall through the churning water, the massive shape rising from the depths, the mouth opening to receive you, the transition from drowning to breathing liquid, the impossible realization that you're still alive inside the digestive system of some creature from the deepest parts of the sea. But even as you remember these events, they feel distant, dreamlike, as if they happened to someone else. The physical reality of your current situation is so overwhelming, so alien, that your mind struggles to process it as something that's actually happening to you. You're Jonah, son of Amittai, prophet of the God of Israel, and you're alive inside the belly of a great fish somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea. The psychological impact of this realization hits you in waves. First comes the claustrophobia, the crushing awareness that you're trapped inside another living being with no way out. The walls around you aren't walls you can break through or doors you can open. They're part of a creature that could digest you at any moment, that should have digested you already if normal biological processes were at work. Then comes the disorientation, the complete loss of any familiar reference points. You don't know which way is up or down. You don't know if the creature is swimming near the surface or in the deepest parts of the ocean. You don't know if it's day or night outside. Time itself becomes meaningless in this place, where there's no sun to mark the hours, no natural rhythms to provide structure to your existence. The isolation is perhaps the worst part. You're more alone than any human being has ever been, cut off not just from other people, but from the entire world outside this biological prison. No one knows where you are. No one could find you even if they were looking. You're trapped in a space that exists in the borderland between life and death, sustained by a miracle you don't understand for purposes you can't fathom. But even as the weight of your situation threatens to crush your spirit, you become aware of something else, something that transforms the nature of your imprisonment. This isn't just a random tragedy, a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This is divine intervention. This creature didn't swallow you by accident. It was prepared by God, appointed for this specific purpose, positioned in exactly the right place at exactly the right moment to save you from drowning. The same God you've been running from has provided this impossible salvation. The Lord who commanded you to go to Nineveh, whom you tried to escape by sailing in the opposite direction, has pursued you into the depths of the sea and rescued you in the most unlikely way imaginable. Even your rebellion, even your disobedience, even your attempt to flee from his presence has been anticipated and accounted for in his plans. This realization brings with it a complex mixture of emotions. There's gratitude for being saved from certain death in the Mediterranean waters. There's awe at the sheer impossibility of your survival in this environment. There's fear of what this experience might mean, what God might be planning to teach you through this impossible trial. But there's also a growing sense of the futility of trying to run from God. If the Lord can prepare a great fish to swallow you and keep you alive in its belly, if he can orchestrate storms and control the lots cast by pagan sailors, if he can pursue you to the bottom of the sea and rescue you there, then clearly there's nowhere you can go to escape his presence. The liquid around you shifts slightly, and you become aware that the creature is moving, swimming through the dark waters of the Mediterranean with you in its belly. Each movement of its massive body creates currents in the fluid that surrounds you, gentle but noticeable reminders that you're a passenger in a living vessel traveling towards some unknown destination. You wonder where it's taking you, back toward the coast of Israel, towards some other shore where God wants you to fulfill the mission you tried to avoid, or simply deeper into the ocean, to depths where the creature can maintain you in this impossible state of suspended animation until you learn whatever lessons this experience is meant to teach. The creature's digestive system continues its work around you, but somehow you're protected from its effects. By all rights, you should be being broken down by stomach acids, dissolved by digestive enzymes, processed like any other food the creature might have consumed. Instead, you remain intact, conscious, aware, maintained in a state that defies every biological principle you understand. This protection feels deliberate, intentional, miraculous. The same divine power that prepared this creature to swallow you has also prepared it to sustain you, to keep you alive in an environment where life should be impossible. You're breathing liquid and surviving, suspended in a biological chamber and thriving, existing inside another creature and remaining fully conscious and aware. As the hours pass, or what you assume are hours in this timeless place, you begin to develop a strange familiarity with your surroundings. The rhythm of the creature's heartbeat becomes a kind of music, marking time in this space where normal time doesn't exist. The temperature and texture of the liquid become comfortable, even comforting. The walls of your living prison begin to feel less like a cage and more like a sanctuary. But this growing comfort only makes the psychological challenges more intense. You're adapting to an environment where humans aren't meant to survive, finding peace in a situation that should terrify you, accepting the impossible as normal. What does this say about your state of mind? What does this suggest about how long you might be here? The thought of time stretches before you like an ocean of uncertainty. God told the crew that this storm was because of you, and the storm stopped when they threw you overboard. But how long will you remain in this creature's belly? Hours, days, weeks, the rest of your life. There's no way to know, no precedent for this situation, no guidebook for surviving inside a sea monster. You try to pray, but even prayer feels strange in this place. How do you address the God you were running from while suspended in the belly of the creature he prepared to save you? How do you express gratitude for a rescue that feels like imprisonment? How do you ask for deliverance from a situation that is itself a form of deliverance? The words come slowly, hesitantly, shaped by the liquid you're breathing and the impossible circumstances of your situation. But they come because even here, especially here, you need to acknowledge the divine power that has brought you to this place and sustained you in it. The creature continues its journey through the dark waters, carrying you toward whatever destiny awaits, while you float in the warm darkness of its belly and begin to understand that your running days are over. The creature continues its journey through the dark waters, carrying you toward whatever destiny awaits, while you float in the warm darkness of its belly and begin to understand that your running days are over. As time passes in this timeless place, you become increasingly aware of just how impossible your survival really is. Every breath you take should be your last. Every moment you remain conscious should be the moment before your body finally succumbs to the biological impossibility of your situation. Yet here you are, breathing liquid as naturally as you once breathed air, existing in an environment that should kill any human being within minutes. The oxygen you're extracting from this organic fluid defies every principle of human physiology you understand. Your lungs weren't designed to process liquid. The delicate tissues that allow gas exchange should be damaged, flooded, non-functional. Instead, they're somehow extracting whatever life, sustaining elements they need from this biological suit that surrounds you. Each breath is a miracle, each moment of consciousness a testament to divine intervention overriding natural law. You begin to experiment with your breathing, testing the limits of this impossible adaptation. When you try to hold your breath, the urge to breathe returns just as it would in air, but when you finally give in and inhale, the liquid flows into your lungs without the choking, drowning sensation you'd expect. It's as if your respiratory system has been fundamentally altered, redesigned for this specific environment, transformed by the same divine power that prepared this creature to receive you. The liquid itself seems to be more than just the creature's digestive fluids. There's a complexity to its composition that suggests multiple biological processes at work. Sometimes it tastes more metallic, as if rich in minerals your body needs. Sometimes it has an almost sweet quality, as if glucose or other nutrients are being added to the mixture. Sometimes it carries hints of other flavors entirely, organic compounds that your transformed physiology can somehow process and utilize. The temperature regulation is equally miraculous. In normal seawater, hypothermia would set in within hours, even in the Mediterranean. Your body temperature would drop, your circulation would slow, your organs would begin to shut down. Instead, the environment inside the creature maintains a perfect thermal balance, warm enough to keep your metabolism functioning normally, but not so warm as to cause heat stress or discomfort. This temperature seems to be actively controlled rather than simply the natural result of the creature's body heat. You notice subtle variations, as if the creature's internal systems are monitoring your condition and adjusting accordingly. When you move more vigorously, exploring your liquid prison, the temperature drops slightly to help cool you. When you remain still for long periods, it warms incrementally to prevent any chill from setting in. The pressure around you is another impossibility. At the depths where a creature this size would normally swim, the water pressure should be crushing, lethal to any human body. Your lungs should collapse, your blood should be forced into tissues where it doesn't belong. Your bones should crack under the immense weight of the ocean above. Instead, the pressure inside the creature's belly seems perfectly calibrated to match what your body can tolerate. This pressure regulation extends beyond simple survival to actual comfort. There's no sensation of being crushed or compressed, no difficulty with circulation or breathing. If anything, the gentle pressure feels supportive, like being wrapped in the world's most sophisticated pressure suit, designed by someone who understands human physiology better than any human ever could. The chemical composition of your liquid environment should be lethal in multiple ways. Stomach acid strong enough to digest large prey should burn through your skin and tissue within minutes. Digestive enzymes designed to break down organic matter should dissolve you as efficiently as they would any other food. The pH levels alone should be enough to kill you quickly and painfully. Instead, your skin feels healthy, normal, even softer than usual, as if the liquid has moisturizing properties. There's no burning, no irritation, no sensation of being chemically attacked by your environment. Whatever acidic or enzymatic properties this liquid normally possesses seem to be neutralized or redirected when it comes to your body specifically. You run your hands over your skin repeatedly, marveling at this protection. Your flesh should be raw, damaged, beginning to dissolve. Instead, it feels cleaner than it has in days of travel and stress. The salt and grime from your journey, the sweat and dirt accumulated during your flight from God's calling, all of it seems to have been gently washed away by this organic solution that surrounds you. Your clothing, what remains of it, tells a different story. The rough woolen robes you wore when the sailors threw you overboard are slowly deteriorating in ways that suggest the liquid does indeed have digestive properties. The fabric is becoming softer, more fragile, beginning to break down at the seams and edges. Yet your skin remains unaffected, protected by whatever miraculous intervention is keeping you alive in this impossible place. The air pockets that occasionally form and move through the liquid around you provide another puzzle. Sometimes you notice bubbles or spaces where the liquid seems less dense, areas that might contain actual air or some other gas. When you encounter these pockets, you can sometimes hear sounds more clearly. The creature's heartbeat becomes more resonant, the groaning of its massive body more pronounced. These air pockets seem to appear and disappear, according to some pattern you can't quite understand. Sometimes they cluster around your head, as if providing an alternative breathing option if needed. Sometimes they form near your hands, allowing you to experience the sensation of touching gas instead of liquid. Sometimes they create temporary cavities in the walls around you, giving you glimpses of different textures and structures in the creature's internal anatomy. The sounds that surround you constantly provide evidence of the massive scale of the biological processes keeping you alive. The creature's heartbeat, which you felt as vibrations from the moment you arrived here, reveals itself to be just one element in a symphony of organic functions happening on an almost geological scale. Each heartbeat takes longer than your own breathing cycle. The pause between beat stretches for seconds that feel like minutes in this timeless environment. When the heart does contract, the sound is like thunder rolling through the creature's entire body, followed by the rush of blood through arteries large enough for you to swim through, if such a thing were possible. The breathing sounds, when they occur, involve the movement of air volumes that dwarf anything in human experience. You can hear the slow, massive expansion of lung chambers somewhere far above you, the gradual intake of air that could fill a temple, the equally gradual release that creates currents and pressure changes throughout the creature's entire internal system. Between the heartbeats and breathing, there are other sounds that speak to the complexity of the biological machine that has become your world. Digestive processes rumbling in chambers adjacent to yours, the grinding and churning of food being broken down on a scale appropriate to a creature this size. The creaking and shifting of skeletal structures as the creature moves through the water, bones larger than the masts of ships flexing and adjusting to the demands of swimming in the deep ocean. Sometimes you hear what might be the creature's voice, though calling it a voice seems inadequate for sounds produced by vocal structures the size of buildings. These are deep, resonant tones that vibrate through the liquid around you, through the walls of your chamber, through your own body. Whether these sounds are intentional communication or simply the byproduct of biological functions, you can't determine, but they add to the otherworldly atmosphere of your imprisonment. The creature's movement through the water creates its own category of sensations. You can feel the rhythm of its swimming, the powerful undulation of its body as it propels itself through the Mediterranean. Each stroke of its tail sends waves of motion through the liquid around you, gentle but noticeable accelerations and decelerations that remind you that you're a passenger in a living vessel traveling to an unknown destination. Sometimes the creature seems to dive deeper, and you feel the subtle increase in pressure, the slight change in the sounds around you as water becomes denser and sound travels differently. Sometimes it appears to rise toward the surface, and the pressure decreases incrementally, though never enough to cause discomfort or dangerous pressure changes in your own body. The direction of travel is impossible to determine from inside your liquid prison, but you sense that the creature is moving with purpose rather than simply wandering the ocean. There's a consistency to its swimming patterns, a sense of destination rather than aimless migration. Whether this destination is chosen by the creature itself or directed by the same divine, will that orchestrated your rescue? You can't know, but the purposefulness of the journey adds to your growing understanding that nothing about this experience is random. Your sense of time begins to stretch and distort in this environment where there are no natural rhythms to mark the passing of hours. The creature's heartbeat provides a kind of metronome, but counting heartbeats becomes meaningless when each one lasts so long, and when your own consciousness drifts in and out of different states of awareness. Sometimes you find yourself in a state that's not quite sleep, but not quite full consciousness either. Your mind drifts, processes the impossibility of your situation, tries to make sense of experiences that have no precedent in human history. These twilight states of consciousness seem to be encouraged by your environment, as if the liquid you're breathing has mild sedative properties that help your mind cope with the stress of your situation. During these altered states, you sometimes have what might be dreams, or might be visions, or might be something else entirely. Images of Nineveh, the city you were commanded to prophesy against. Scenes of Assyrian cruelty that made you flee from God's calling in the first place. Memories of your life in Israel, of the familiar routines and comfortable predictability you left behind when you chose rebellion over obedience. But you also experience visions of things you've never seen before. The creature that houses you, viewed from outside, swimming through dark waters with purpose and grace. The Mediterranean Sea as seen from impossible depths, a world of darkness and pressure and alien life. Sometimes you see or sense other sea creatures, smaller fish fleeing from the massive presence of your host, larger predators giving it respectful distance. Most disturbing and enlightening are the visions that seem to show you the perspective of the creature itself. Brief moments where you sense its thoughts, if they can be called thoughts, its awareness of the precious cargo it carries, its understanding of the divine mission it's fulfilling. These glimpses suggest an intelligence far greater than you expected, a consciousness that recognizes the miraculous nature of what's happening and willingly participates in God's plan. The physical demands of existing in this environment begin to take their toll in ways you didn't anticipate. Your muscles, accustomed to working against air resistance and gravity, start to atrophy slightly from the constant support provided by the liquid around you. Moving through this dense medium requires different muscle groups and different types of effort than normal terrestrial movement. Your skin, despite being protected from the digestive properties of your environment, begins to change in subtle ways. The constant moisture and warmth soften colices and rough patches, making your flesh more sensitive to touch and pressure. Your hair seems to grow faster than normal, as if the nutrient-rich liquid is providing more than just respiratory support. Your digestive system presents the most complex challenge. You haven't eaten solid food since your last meal on the ship, yet you don't feel the hunger pangs or weakness you'd expect from fasting. The liquid you're breathing seems to provide some form of nutrition, though how your body is processing it remains a mystery. You never feel truly satisfied, but you never feel the desperate hunger that should accompany days without food. The biological waste processes that your body normally requires become another puzzle. In a normal environment, the absence of regular elimination would quickly become uncomfortable and then dangerous. Here, your body seems to have adapted to whatever this environment provides and requires, processing waste in ways you don't understand and can't observe. This adaptation extends to your circulation as well. Your heart, accustomed to pumping blood through a body working against gravity, adjusts to the near weightless environment of your liquid suspension. Your blood pressure stabilizes at levels that feel healthy and sustainable, though you have no way to measure them precisely. As you become more familiar with the rhythms, and patterns of your impossible existence, you begin to understand that this experience is changing you in fundamental ways, not just psychologically or spiritually, though those changes are profound, but physically as well. Your body is adapting to an environment where no human body should be able to survive, and these adaptations feel permanent rather than temporary. The thought that you might emerge from this experience fundamentally different from the man who entered it adds another layer of complexity to your already overwhelming situation. Will you still be entirely human when this is over? Will your body remember how to breathe air, how to move through normal environments, how to function in the world you left behind? But even as these concerns occupy your thoughts, you find yourself settling into the strange peace of your impossible circumstances, accepting miracles as your new normal, and beginning to understand that your time in this living sanctuary is preparation for something far greater than simple survival. The creature swims on through the dark waters, carrying you toward your destiny while you float in the warm darkness of its belly, and slowly become something new. The creature swims on through the dark waters, carrying you toward your destiny while you float in the warm darkness of its belly, and slowly become something new. But as the reality of your situation settles deeper into your consciousness, the initial wonder and awe begin to give way to something darker, more troubling. The miracle of your survival, which at first seemed like pure divine grace, starts to feel more like divine punishment. You're alive, yes, but you're also trapped in the most complete isolation any human being has ever experienced. The claustrophobia comes in waves, starting as a gentle unease and building to moments of pure panic that threaten to overwhelm your sanity. The walls around you, which had begun to feel comforting in their constancy, suddenly seem to press closer, tighter, more confining. The liquid that surrounds you, which had felt supportive and life-giving, begins to feel thick and suffocating. You try to swim to the surface of your liquid prison, forgetting momentarily that there is no surface, no up or down, no escape route in any direction. Your hands strike the muscular walls with increasing desperation, feeling for some opening, some weakness, some way out that your rational mind knows doesn't exist. The walls pulse and contract around you with the creature's biological rhythms, indifferent to your growing panic. Your breathing becomes rapid and shallow, as much as breathing liquid can be rapid and shallow. The miracle that allows you to extract oxygen from this organic fluid suddenly feels fragile, tenuous, as if it might fail at any moment and leave you drowning in the belly of this beast. Each breath becomes a conscious effort, a deliberate choice to trust in an impossible process that defies everything you know about human physiology. The panic attacks, when they come, are unlike anything you've ever experienced. They start with a racing heart, but a heart that's beating liquid instead of pumping blood through air, breathing lungs. Your pulse pounds in your ears, competing with the creature's massive heartbeat until you can't distinguish between your own cardiovascular system and that of your host. The rhythm becomes chaotic, discordant, a biological symphony gone wrong. Your hands shake as you reach out frantically in the darkness, searching for something solid, something real, something that might anchor you to sanity. But everything you touch is alive, pulsing, organic. The walls breathe around you, expanding and contracting with the creature's respiratory cycle. The floor beneath you shifts and moves with muscular contractions. Even the liquid you're suspended in seems to have a pulse of its own, responding to biological rhythms you can't understand. During these episodes, you become hyper-aware of your complete dependence on forces beyond your control. Your life depends on the creature's continued existence. Your breathing depends on the miraculous properties of this liquid. Your sanity depends on maintaining some connection to who you were before this happened. And all of these dependencies feel increasingly fragile, increasingly uncertain. The worst part of the panic is the absolute helplessness. In a normal crisis, you could run, fight, call for help, do something to improve your situation. Here, there's literally nothing you can do. You're utterly passive, completely at the mercy of biological processes and divine intervention. This helplessness breeds a special kind of terror, a fear not just of death but of meaninglessness, of being reduced to a passive object in forces too large to comprehend. The darkness, which had seemed peaceful and womb-like during your initial adjustment, transforms into something oppressive and threatening. Complete sensory deprivation wasn't something humans were designed to endure for extended periods. Your mind, starved of visual input, begins to create its own images, phantom lights and shapes that dance at the edges of your consciousness. Sometimes these visual hallucinations are benign, simple geometric patterns or remembered scenes from your life in Israel. But increasingly, they become more disturbing, twisted versions of familiar places and faces, nightmarish distortions that seem to emerge from the deepest fears buried in your subconscious mind. The prophet's imagination, normally focused on receiving divine visions, turns inward and creates horrors from the darkness. You see Nineveh as it might be, but transformed into something even more terrifying than the real city. In these visions, the Assyrian capital becomes a place of impossible cruelty, where torture has evolved into art forms beyond human comprehension. You see yourself standing before crowds of people whose faces shift and change, sometimes human, sometimes bestial, always hostile. You see your own death played out in dozens of different ways, each more creative and painful than the last. These aren't prophetic visions in the traditional sense. They're the products of a mind under extreme stress, deprived of normal sensory input and struggling to process an impossible situation. But they feel real, more real sometimes than your actual surroundings. The liquid darkness around you becomes populated with threatening shadows, with watching eyes, with reaching hands that dissolve when you try to touch them. Sometimes you see the sailors from the ship, the men who threw you overboard. In your hallucinations, they're standing around you in a circle, arguing about what to do with you, drawing lots again and again. But the lots never fall the same way twice, and the sailors' faces keep changing, becoming the faces of everyone who has ever judged you, ever found you wanting, ever expected more than you were able to give. Other times you see your family, but they're mourning over an empty grave, weeping for a son and brother who disappeared while running from God. Their grief is exaggerated in these visions, operatic in its intensity. They tear their clothes and throw dust on their heads and wail with voices that echo strangely in the liquid around you. The worst part is that you can't comfort them, can't tell them you're still alive, can't bridge the impossible distance between your aquatic prison and their terrestrial sorrow. The sounds that surround you constantly, which had initially provided comfort and orientation, begin to feel overwhelming and alien. The creature's heartbeat, massive and slow, starts to sound like the drums of some pagan temple, marking time in a ritual you don't understand and can't escape. The rush of blood through arteries larger than rivers becomes the sound of rushing waters that threaten to drown you even though you're already breathing liquid. Every creak and groan of the creature's massive skeleton, every rumble of its digestive processes, every shifting of its internal organs becomes a reminder that you're trapped inside another living being, dependent on its continued existence for your own survival. What if it dies? What if it's attacked by other sea creatures? What if it decides to actually digest you instead of sustaining you? These questions circle through your mind like predators, growing stronger with each repetition. The loss of time becomes a special kind of torture. Without any natural rhythms to mark the passage of hours or days, time stretches and compresses in ways that make you question your own sanity. Have you been here for hours or weeks? Have you missed the Sabbath? How many sunrises and sunsets have passed while you float in this timeless darkness? The uncertainty gnaws at you, making you feel disconnected not just from the world, but from the fundamental structures that give life meaning. You try to create your own systems for measuring time, counting the creature's heartbeats or breathing cycles, but the numbers become meaningless in the context of your isolation. 1,000 heartbeats could be an hour or a day, and you have no way to know which. The creature's biological rhythms are alien to human experience, operating on scales that dwarf normal human timeframes. Sleep becomes another temporal puzzle. You find yourself drifting in and out of consciousness, but whether these periods constitute sleep in any meaningful sense is unclear. There are no dreams in the traditional sense, just shifts in the intensity of your hallucinations. Sometimes you wake up feeling as if years have passed. Other times, consciousness returns feeling as if only moments have elapsed. The absence of natural light creates its own form of disorientation. Your body's circadian rhythms have nothing to anchor themselves to in this place. Your internal clock spins wildly, sometimes making you feel alert when you should be tired, sometimes bringing overwhelming fatigue when you feel you should be awake. This temporal confusion extends to your memories as well. Events from your past begin to blur together, losing their proper sequence and context. Conversations you had as a child seem to have happened yesterday, while your recent journey to Joppa feels like ancient history. The normal architecture of memory, built on temporal scaffolding, begins to collapse without the framework of regular time to support it. You become obsessed with trying to calculate how long you've been here using whatever reference points you can find. But every method you try leads to different answers, and none of them feel reliable. The creature's heartbeat might be steady, but how do you know it doesn't change pace with activity or rest? The temperature fluctuations in your liquid environment might follow patterns, but what if those patterns operate on cycles completely unrelated to terrestrial time? This uncertainty about time creates a special form of anxiety. Are you missing important events in the world outside? Has the political situation in Israel changed? Have your friends and family given up hope of your return? Are there other prophets already on their way to Nineveh, fulfilling the mission you abandoned? The inability to answer these questions adds another layer of torment to your already overwhelming psychological burden. Your sense of identity begins to fragment under the strain of this impossible existence. You are Jonah, son of Amittai, prophet of the God of Israel. But what does it mean to be a prophet when you're trapped where no prophecy can be heard? What does it mean to be a son of Israel when you're cut off from the land and people that define your heritage? What does it mean to be human when you're living in ways that no human should be able to live? The physical changes to your body, which had seemed miraculous and fascinating at first, begin to feel like a loss of humanity. Your softened skin, your altered breathing, your adapted circulation, all of these modifications make you feel less like yourself and more like some hybrid creature, neither fully human nor fully adapted to this aquatic existence. You're becoming something in between, something that belongs neither in the world above nor in this liquid realm. Your relationship with your own body becomes complicated and disturbing. The flesh that houses your soul has been fundamentally altered by forces beyond your control or understanding. You can feel these changes happening gradually, subtly, but inevitably. Each day, if days have any meaning in this place, you become a little less like the man who was thrown overboard, and a little more like something else entirely. The theological implications of your situation create their own category of psychological torment. You understand that God has saved you, that this impossible survival is a miracle of divine intervention. But the nature of this salvation feels deeply ambiguous. Are you being preserved for some great purpose, or are you being punished for your disobedience in the most creative way possible? Traditional punishment would have been simple. Death by drowning, swift and final, or death by storm, crushed by waves and wind, or even death by divine wrath, struck down for daring to flee from the presence of the Lord. Any of these fates would have been comprehensible, final, complete. Instead, you're suspended in a state that's neither life nor death, neither salvation nor damnation, neither freedom nor captivity. This ambiguity torments you more than simple punishment would have. At least in punishment, you could understand your situation, accept your fate, make peace with the consequences of your choices. But this defies every category you have for understanding divine action. This feels like being held in cosmic suspense, waiting for a resolution that may never come. Your prayers, when you attempt them, feel hollow and strange in this environment. How do you pray to God while floating in the belly of a creature He prepared? How do you ask for deliverance when the thing you're asking to be delivered from is itself a form of deliverance? How do you express repentance when you're not sure whether your current situation represents forgiveness or judgment? The words of traditional prayers seem inadequate for your circumstances. The psalms you memorized as a child speak of green pastures and still waters, of walking through valleys and dwelling in houses. None of them anticipated praying while breathing liquid in the digestive system of a sea monster. The familiar phrases that once brought comfort now seem to belong to a different world entirely, a world of normal human experience that you may never inhabit again. You try to create new prayers, words that might be appropriate for your unique situation, but even these feel forced and artificial. How do you find language for experiences that have no precedent? How do you address God from a position that no human being has ever occupied before? The inadequacy of human language becomes another source of frustration and despair. Memory becomes both a refuge and a torment. You find yourself reliving scenes from your life in Israel with vivid clarity, as if your mind is compensating for the sensory deprivation of your current environment by amplifying remembrances of sight and sound and smell. These memories can be comforting, reminders of the normal life you once lived and might someday return to. But memory also serves as a constant reminder of everything you've lost. The simple pleasure of feeling sunlight on your skin, the taste of bread and wine, the sound of human voices in conversation, the sight of familiar landscapes and beloved faces. All of these experiences feel infinitely precious now that they're gone, and their absence creates a form of grief that threatens to overwhelm you. You remember specific moments with painful clarity. The last conversation you had with your family before receiving God's call to go to Nineveh. The last meal you ate in your own home. The last time you walked on dry land under an open sky. These memories feel like artifacts from another life, evidence of a person you used to be who may no longer exist. The people you left behind occupy an increasing amount of your thoughts. Do they know what happened to you? Have they heard about the storm and the Hebrew prophet who was thrown overboard? Are they mourning your death, or are they still hoping for your return? The uncertainty about their emotional state adds another layer of anguish to your psychological burden. Your family probably assumes you're dead. Why wouldn't they? Prophets who flee from God's calling don't typically survive the experience. The last they knew, you had left for Nineveh under divine compulsion. They wouldn't know about your rebellion, your flight to Joppa, your attempt to sail to Tarshish. In their minds, You simply disappeared while fulfilling your prophetic duties. This thought brings with it a complex mixture of guilt and relief. Guilt because your family is suffering unnecessarily, mourning a death that hasn't actually occurred. Relief because they don't know the truth about your disobedience, your cowardice, your attempt to flee from the presence of the Lord. Their grief is painful to contemplate, but it might be easier for them to bear than the knowledge of your spiritual failure. The question of whether you'll ever see them again becomes a constant, gnawing uncertainty. Even if you survive this experience, even if the creature eventually releases you, will you be the same person they remember? Will the man who emerges from this aquatic tomb be recognizable as the son, brother, friend they once knew? Or will you have been transformed beyond recognition by this impossible trial? Your understanding of yourself as a prophet comes under intense scrutiny during the long hours of isolation and reflection. What kind of prophet runs away from God's calling? What kind of spiritual leader chooses personal comfort over divine mission? What kind of man of God tries to hide from the omnipresent Lord by crossing a sea the Lord himself created? These questions cycle through your mind with obsessive repetition, each iteration bringing fresh waves of shame and self-recrimination. You examine every aspect of your prophetic career, looking for signs of the cowardice that ultimately led to this moment. Were there earlier instances where you chose the easy path instead of the righteous one? Were there warnings you ignored, smaller rebellions that prepared the way for this ultimate act of disobedience? You remember your prophetic training, the years spent learning to distinguish between divine revelation and human imagination. The elders who taught you emphasized the sacred responsibility of speaking God's words, regardless of how those words might be received. They spoke of prophets who faced persecution, exile, even death rather than compromise their divine message. All of that training feels like mockery now. You had the knowledge, the preparation, the spiritual foundation necessary for faithful service. But when the moment came for actual sacrifice, when God called you to put that training into practice in the most dangerous possible context, you faltered. You ran. The prophetic gifts that once seemed like divine blessing now feel like divine judgment. Your ability to receive revelations, to understand God's will, to perceive spiritual realities, all of these capabilities make your rebellion more inexcusable. You knew better. You knew the consequences of disobedience, the futility of trying to flee from an omnipresent God, the certainty that divine purposes would be accomplished with or without your cooperation. Yet you ran anyway. This knowledge makes your situation even more psychologically torturous. You're not an innocent victim of circumstances beyond your control. You're not even an ignorant sinner who stumbled into trouble through lack of understanding. You're a trained prophet who willfully chose rebellion despite knowing better, a spiritual leader who abandoned his post at the moment of greatest testing. The isolation forces you to confront aspects of your character that you've managed to avoid examining during your normal life. In the busyness of daily routine, in the company of other people, in the familiar surroundings of home and community, it's possible to maintain illusions about yourself, to focus on your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. But here, stripped of all external supports and distractions, you see yourself with brutal clarity. You are not the man you thought you were. You are not the prophet you aspired to be. The courage you thought you possessed was never tested until now, and it has proven inadequate. The faith you believed was strong was actually conditional, dependent on circumstances remaining comfortable and safe. The obedience you practiced was selective, limited to commands that didn't require significant personal sacrifice. This self-knowledge is devastating, but also strangely liberating. For perhaps the first time in your life, you see yourself without pretense or self-deception. The man floating in this impossible liquid sanctuary is flawed, frightened, selfish, weak. He is also human, and perhaps that humanity is more acceptable to God than the false piety he had been trying to maintain. The realization that God saved you despite your failures, not because of your merits, begins to penetrate your consciousness like light filtering through dark water. This impossible rescue wasn't earned through faithful service or prophetic excellence. It was given freely, a grace that pursued you into the depths of rebellion and pulled you back from the abyss of death. This is love beyond comprehension, mercy beyond deserve, grace beyond logic. But even as these dark thoughts dominate your consciousness, something else begins to stir in the depths of your despair. A recognition that this experience, horrible as it is, might also be a form of mercy. You deserve death for your rebellion. You deserve to be left to drown in the Mediterranean as a consequence of your choices. Instead, you've been saved, preserved, maintained in this impossible state. Why? Not because you deserve it, that much is clear. Not because you're a faithful servant. Your actions have proven otherwise. You're being sustained despite your failures, not because of your merits. This realization brings with it the first faint stirrings of a different kind of understanding, a deeper appreciation for the nature of divine grace. The God you tried to flee from has followed you into the depths of the sea and rescued you there. The Lord, whose presence you sought to escape, has enclosed you in a sanctuary where his presence is the only thing preventing your death. You cannot run from God, because there is nowhere God is not. You cannot escape divine love, because that love pursues even the most rebellious servants to the bottom of the ocean. This understanding doesn't immediately lift your despair, but it begins to transform it. Your suffering is real, your isolation is profound, your psychological torment is genuine, but none of it is meaningless. All of it is happening under divine oversight, within divine purposes that you can't yet understand, but are beginning to trust. The creature that houses you continues its purposeful journey through the dark waters, carrying you not just to some unknown destination, but towards some unknown version of yourself. In the warm darkness of its belly, suspended in miraculous liquid, breathing the impossible and surviving the unsurvivable, you slowly begin to understand that your running days are over and your real education is just beginning. The creature that houses you continues its purposeful journey through the dark waters, carrying you not just to some unknown destination, but towards some unknown version of yourself. In the warm darkness of its belly, suspended in miraculous liquid, breathing the impossible and surviving the unsurvivable, you slowly begin to understand that your running days are over and your real education is just beginning. As the psychological storm of despair and self-recrimination begins to settle into something more manageable, you start to perceive the true scope of the miracle that sustains you. This isn't just survival against impossible odds. This is a complete suspension of natural law, a divine intervention so comprehensive that every moment of your continued existence requires constant supernatural maintenance. Your breathing, which had become such a source of anxiety during your panic attacks, reveals itself to be just one element in an intricate system of divine protection. The liquid that fills your lungs doesn't just provide oxygen, it actively cleanses and purifies your respiratory system with each breath cycle. Every inhalation removes toxins that have accumulated from years of breathing the dusty air of Palestine. Every exhalation carries away cellular waste products with an efficiency that surpasses anything your normal respiratory system could achieve. The liquid itself seems to be alive with beneficial properties. It contains minerals that strengthen your lung tissue, compounds that improve the elasticity of your airways, elements that enhance your body's ability to process oxygen at the cellular level. You're not just surviving in this environment, You're thriving in ways that seem to improve your physical condition beyond what it was before you entered this aquatic sanctuary. You can feel your lung capacity expanding as the liquid teaches your respiratory muscles to work more efficiently. Breathing patterns that had been shallow and restricted by years of stress and tension become deep and rhythmic. The chronic tightness in your chest from anxiety about your prophetic calling gradually dissolves as the miraculous medium works its healing magic on your entire respiratory system. Even your voice, when you speak prayers or simply test your ability to vocalize in this impossible environment, sounds clearer and stronger than it ever has. The liquid doesn't muffle sound the way normal water would. Instead, it seems to resonate with your vocal cords, amplifying and purifying the tones you produce. This is preparation, you realize, for the voice that will need to carry the word of the Lord to the streets of Nineveh. The temperature regulation that keeps you comfortable in what should be a lethal environment operates with precision that reveals divine engineering. Your body temperature remains perfectly stable despite the fact that you're submerged in liquid, despite the pressure of the ocean depths, despite the biological processes of a creature whose internal chemistry should be toxic to human life. This temperature control extends beyond mere comfort to active healing, as the warmth penetrates deep into your muscles and organs, relieving tensions and pains you didn't even realize you were carrying. The pressure that surrounds you, which should have crushed your human frame within minutes of entering this environment, instead provides therapeutic support for every part of your body. Your circulation improves under this gentle but constant compression. Your joints feel more flexible and pain-free than they have in years. Your spine aligns perfectly in the weightless environment, relieving chronic aches that you had accepted as permanent features of terrestrial existence. Even the chemical composition of your liquid environment reveals layers of divine consideration that become more apparent the longer you exist within it. What should be a corrosive digestive medium has been transformed into something that not only preserves your flesh, but actively nourishes it in ways that seem to improve upon normal human physiology. Your skin, which should have been dissolved by stomach acids within hours, instead appears healthier and more vibrant than it has ever been. The liquid's chemistry seems to adapt constantly to your body's changing needs. When you feel tired, it provides energizing compounds that flow directly through your skin into your bloodstream. When you feel stressed, it releases calming elements that soothe your nervous system more effectively than any herb or medicine you've ever encountered. When your muscles feel tight from the strange positioning required by your aquatic existence, the liquid provides compounds that act as natural muscle relaxants. Small scars and blemishes that have marked your skin for years begin to fade away, as if the liquid possesses healing properties beyond anything known to human medicine. Old injuries that occasionally ached in cold weather stop bothering you entirely. Even childhood scars from accidents and scrapes disappear under the gentle but persistent healing action of this miraculous medium. Your hair grows stronger and more lustrous in this impossible environment, fed by nutrients that penetrate directly through the follicles. Your fingernails become harder and more resilient, as if the liquid is providing mineral supplements that strengthen keratin in ways normal nutrition never could. Even your teeth feel cleaner and stronger, as if the liquid is providing calcium and other minerals that strengthen enamel and prevent decay, while simultaneously removing plaque and bacteria more effectively than any cleaning regimen. Every aspect of your physical being is not just preserved but enhanced by your time in this divine incubator. You're being rebuilt, optimized, prepared for whatever challenges await you when you return to the terrestrial world. The God who called you to a difficult mission is ensuring that your body will be strong enough to fulfill it. The waste elimination that should have become a crisis in this enclosed environment happens through processes you can't understand but can clearly observe. Your body seems to have adapted to extract everything useful from whatever nutrients the liquid provides, while eliminating waste through your skin in ways that don't create any buildup or contamination in your environment. It's as if your entire digestive and excretory system has been redesigned for this specific situation. Your circulation has adapted to work optimally in this liquid medium. Your heart beats steadily and strongly, pumping what feels like enriched blood through vessels that seem to have expanded to accommodate improved flow. You feel more alert and energetic than you have in years. Despite the psychological stress of your situation, your body is functioning at peak efficiency in an environment where it shouldn't be able to function at all. The creature's movement through the water creates its own category of beneficial effects. The gentle, constant motion provides a form of exercise that keeps your muscles toned and your joints flexible without any effort on your part. You're being carried through the ocean while receiving the equivalent of the world's most sophisticated physical therapy. Your body maintained in perfect condition by forces you can't control but can definitely appreciate. As you become more aware of these physical miracles, your understanding of your spiritual situation begins to shift as well. This level of divine intervention, this comprehensive suspension of natural law, this meticulous attention to every detail of your survival and health, all of it speaks to a love and care that transcends anything you could have earned or deserved through your own actions. The God you tried to flee from hasn't just saved your life. He has created an entire miraculous ecosystem specifically designed to sustain you during this period of education and transformation. Every breath you take, every beat of your heart, every moment of consciousness in this impossible place is a gift of grace, a demonstration of divine love that pursues even rebellious servants to the depths of the sea. The magnitude of this divine investment in your preservation becomes more apparent with each passing hour. This isn't a simple rescue operation, accomplished quickly and efficiently. This is an elaborate, sustained miracle involving the coordination of biological systems on a scale that staggers your imagination. The creature that houses you, the liquid that sustains you, the pressure and temperature regulation that preserves you, all of it requires constant divine oversight and maintenance. You begin to understand that your rebellion didn't catch God off guard or force him to improvise a hasty solution. This entire scenario was anticipated, prepared for, planned in advance. The great fish was readied for this purpose before you ever set foot on that Phoenician vessel. The miraculous properties of your aquatic environment were designed specifically for your needs before you ever made the decision to flee toward Tarshish. This realization transforms your understanding of divine sovereignty in ways that your prophetic training never quite accomplished. God's plans aren't contingent on human cooperation. Divine purposes aren't derailed by human rebellion. The mission to Nineveh will be fulfilled, with or without your voluntary participation, but your refusal to cooperate only resulted in this elaborate demonstration of divine love pursuing you into the depths of your rebellion. The waste of resources required to sustain you in this impossible environment should make you feel guilty, but instead it makes you feel loved in ways you've never experienced before. This is love that spares no expense, withholds no miracle, overlooks no detail in its pursuit of a rebellious servant. This is grace that follows you to the bottom of the sea and creates new ecosystems to keep you alive while you learn what you need to know. This realization begins to transform your prayers from desperate pleas for escape to something deeper and more authentic. You start to understand that you're not trapped in the belly of a sea monster. You're housed in a divine sanctuary, protected and sustained while you learn lessons that could only be taught in this impossible classroom. The shift in your prayer life happens gradually, like dawn breaking over the ocean's surface far above you. Your first attempts at prayer in this place had been frantic cries for rescue, bargaining sessions where you tried to negotiate your way out of the consequences of your disobedience. But as the days pass, or what you assume are days in this timeless place, your prayers become less about escape and more about understanding. You begin to pray not for deliverance from this situation, but for wisdom to comprehend its purpose. You ask not for rescue from the great fish, but for insight into what God is teaching you through this impossible experience. You plead not for a quick return to your old life, but for transformation that will make you worthy of the calling you once rejected. These prayers feel different from any you've ever offered before. In your normal life, prayers often felt like formal exercises, ritual obligations, or desperate last resorts when human solutions failed. Here, floating in liquid that shouldn't sustain life, dependent on miracles for every breath, prayer becomes as natural and necessary as breathing itself. Your words don't disappear into empty air as they did in normal circumstances. In this liquid medium, every prayer seems to resonate, to carry weight and substance, to echo through the biological chambers around you with a reality that makes you feel heard in ways you've never experienced before. It's as if the very medium you're suspended in is designed to conduct prayers directly to the throne of heaven. Your first genuine prayer in this place doesn't ask for rescue or deliverance. Instead, it acknowledges the miracle of your situation and begins to grapple with its spiritual implications. Lord, you whisper into the liquid darkness, your words somehow taking form despite the medium that surrounds you. I called to you from my distress, and you answered me. From the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. The words come not from any traditional liturgy, but from the depths of your transformed understanding. This isn't death, even though you're in the place of the dead. This isn't punishment, even though you deserve punishment. This is salvation that looks like doom, rescue that feels like imprisonment, love that manifests as what appears to be judgment. You cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas. You continue, your prayer taking shape as you speak it, and the flood surrounded me. All your waves and your billows passed over me. Then I said, I am driven away from your sight, yet I shall again look upon your holy temple. The temple you speak of isn't the stone structure in Jerusalem, magnificent as it is. The temple you envision now is the presence of God Himself, the divine reality that you had been fleeing, but that has pursued you even here, even into this place where no human presence should be able to survive. You understand now that you never actually fled from God's presence. You only fled from your willingness to acknowledge it. The waters closed in over me to take my life. You pray, the words flowing with increasing confidence and clarity. The deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped about my head at the roots of the mountains. I went down to the land whose bars closed upon me forever. Yet you brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. The pit you speak of isn't just the ocean depths where you should have drowned. It's the pit of your own rebellion, your own cowardice, your own spiritual death. The bars that closed upon you weren't just the ribs of this great creature. They were the consequences of your own choices, the prison of your own making. Yet even from that self-imposed exile, divine love reached down and pulled you back to life. When my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord. You continue, your prayer becoming a song of recognition rather than a cry for help. And my prayer came to you, into your holy temple. Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. The vain idols you abandoned weren't golden calves or foreign gods. They were more subtle and more dangerous. Your own comfort, your own safety, your own will placed above divine command. These false securities, these pseudo-deities of personal preservation, had promised you safety but delivered only spiritual death. Now, breathing liquid in the belly of a great fish, you understand what real security looks like. The steadfast love you speak of isn't just an abstract theological concept anymore. It's the tangible reality that surrounds you, sustains you, preserves you in this impossible place. It's love made manifest in biological miracles, grace expressed through the suspension of natural law, mercy demonstrated through the most elaborate rescue operation in human history. But I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you. You pray, your words now ringing with conviction, despite the impossible medium through which they travel. What I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. The vow you speak of isn't something you made before entering this aquatic sanctuary. It's a commitment forming in real time, a promise emerging from your transformed understanding of divine grace. You will go to Nineveh. You will preach repentance to the Assyrians. You will fulfill the mission you tried to abandon, not because you're no longer afraid, but because you've learned that divine love is stronger than human fear. This isn't the courage of a hero who feels no terror. This is the obedience of a servant who has learned that God's purposes will be accomplished regardless of human cooperation, and that participating in those purposes, however frightening, is infinitely better than running from them. The Assyrians may kill you for your message, but they can't separate you from the love that pursued you to the bottom of the sea. The sacrifice you promise isn't the burnt offerings of animals or the grain offerings prescribed by law. It's the sacrifice of your own will, your own plans, your own conception of what your life should look like. You're offering yourself as a living sacrifice, available for whatever purposes God has in mind, transformed by your underwater education into someone who understands what it means to be completely dependent on divine grace. As your prayer concludes, something changes in your environment. The creature's movement through the water becomes more purposeful, more directed. You can feel acceleration, a sense of rising rather than swimming horizontally. The pressure around you shifts subtly, suggesting movement towards shallower water, towards something that might be a destination rather than endless wandering. But this change doesn't happen immediately. First, there's a period of preparation that you can feel throughout the creature's body. The biological rhythms that have become so familiar shift into patterns you haven't experienced before. The heartbeat becomes slightly faster, more urgent. The muscular contractions that move the creature through the water take on a different quality, more powerful, more directed. The liquid that surrounds you begins to taste different, less complex, more like simple seawater. The temperature starts to cool slightly, though still remaining well within the range of comfort. The creature's breathing patterns change, suggesting that it's approaching an environment where it needs to surface more frequently, where the depths it has been inhabiting are giving way to shallower waters. You can sense the creature's massive body reorienting itself in the water, no longer swimming in the random patterns of the deep ocean, but following currents and geographical features that suggest proximity to land. Sometimes you feel the subtle vibrations that might indicate the creature brushing against the sea floor, or the pressure changes that suggest it's navigating underwater topography. The creature's heartbeat seems to quicken with anticipation, as if it recognizes familiar territory, as if it's approaching the completion of a long journey undertaken not for its own purposes, but in obedience to the same divine command that originally called you to Nineveh. This massive inhabitant of the deep has been serving God's purposes just as surely as you have, though with considerably more cooperation and considerably less resistance. You realize that your time in this aquatic sanctuary is drawing to a close, not because the creature is growing tired of carrying you, but because the lessons you needed to learn have been learned. The transformation that needed to occur has occurred. The preparation that was necessary for your mission has been completed. The 3 days and 3 nights that the Lord appointed for your underwater education are coming to an end. You feel the creature's massive body changing orientation, tilting upward at an angle that suggests it's heading for the surface. After what might have been days or weeks in the depths, the prospect of returning to the world above fills you with emotions you can't entirely sort out. Relief at the thought of breathing air again, but also anxiety about leaving this protective sanctuary. Excitement about returning to human contact, but also fear about how you've been changed by this experience. The creature's internal processes begin to shift in ways you can feel throughout your liquid environment. Muscular contractions that feel different from the normal rhythms you've grown accustomed to. Changes in pressure and temperature that suggest biological preparations for something momentous. The creature is preparing to release you, to return you to the world you tried to leave behind. As the moment of your liberation approaches, you realize that you're not the same person who was thrown overboard from that Phoenician vessel. The changes aren't just spiritual or emotional, they're fundamental alterations to who you are as a human being. The man who entered this creature was a coward fleeing from divine calling. The man preparing to leave it is still afraid, but he's afraid of different things now. He fears disappointing the God who saved him more than he fears the people God is sending him to serve. The transformation extends beyond courage to include wisdom, compassion, and understanding that you didn't possess before your aquatic education. You understand now what it means to be completely dependent on divine grace for survival. You know from personal experience what it feels like to be saved when you deserve destruction, preserved when you merit abandonment, loved when you have proven yourself unlovable. This knowledge will transform your message to Nineveh. Before your time in the fish, you would have preached judgment with the certainty of someone who believed himself righteous, condemning those he considered wicked. Now you will preach repentance with the humility of someone who has experienced divine mercy and wants others to discover the same grace that saved him from the depths. Your voice, when you speak to the Assyrians, will carry the authority of someone who has been to the bottom of the sea and returned. Your message will have the authenticity of someone who has experienced divine love in the most impossible circumstances. You won't be preaching theoretical theology. You'll be sharing personal testimony about a God who pursues rebellious servants, even to the depths of the ocean. The fear that once paralyzed you when you thought about facing the Assyrians has been replaced by a different kind of concern. You're still afraid of what they might do to you, but that fear is now overshadowed by your anxiety about faithfully representing the God who has done so much for you. You want your message to reflect the love and mercy you've experienced, not just the judgment that Nineveh deserves. Your body, which has been so thoroughly adapted to this aquatic environment, begins to experience subtle changes that suggest it's being prepared for terrestrial existence again. The adaptation process is as miraculous as your original survival, involving systematic modifications to your physiology that will allow you to transition safely from breathing liquid back to breathing air. Your respiratory system gradually adjusts, developing the capacity to process both liquid and air as the moment of transition approaches. Your circulation changes to accommodate the different pressure and gravitational effects you'll experience on land. Your muscle tone shifts to prepare for movement against gravity rather than through liquid. Every system in your body is being carefully recalibrated for life in the world above the waves. creature's ascent becomes more pronounced. You can feel it rising through layers of water pressure, swimming upward through depths that no human has ever survived experiencing. As it climbs toward the surface, you're carried along in your biological sanctuary, protected from pressure changes that would kill any normal person. Sustained by divine intervention, even as you return to the natural world. Finally, you feel the creature break the surface of the Mediterranean. For the first time in what might have been 3 days and 3 nights, you sense the presence of air above you. Though you're still enclosed within the creature's body, the liquid around you begins to drain away as the creature's internal processes prepare for your expulsion. But the transition is gradual, careful, designed to prevent shock to your system. Your transformed respiratory system gradually readjusts to processing air, guided by the same divine power that allowed you to breathe liquid for so long. The change happens slowly, allowing your lungs to adapt incrementally rather than forcing a sudden transition that might damage the delicate tissues that have been modified for aquatic existence. You can hear new sounds penetrating the creature's body, the splash of waves against its massive form, the cry of seabirds overhead, the distant sound of surf breaking against a shoreline. These are the sounds of the world above the waves, the terrestrial realm you thought you might never experience again. They sound foreign after your time in the biological symphony of the creature's internal environment. But they also sound like hope, like possibility, like the promise of a second chance. The creature positions itself near what you sense must be a shoreline. Through the sounds that penetrate its body, you can hear waves lapping against what might be a beach. The creature's movements become more deliberate, more careful, as if it's navigating shallow water and positioning itself for the precise moment when your release will place you safely on dry land rather than in deep water where you might drown after surviving so much. The muscular contractions around you become more coordinated, more purposeful, building toward the moment when this impossible journey will end and your real mission will begin. You can feel the creature's entire digestive system preparing for a coordinated effort that will expel you gently but completely, ensuring that you arrive on land in condition to fulfill the calling that brought you to this place. But even as your time in this aquatic sanctuary draws to a close, you realize that you'll carry the memory of this experience with you for the rest of your life. The lessons learned in the belly of the great fish will inform every aspect of your future ministry. The understanding of divine grace that you've gained here will transform how you present God's message to others. You've experienced firsthand what it means to be loved unconditionally, saved undeservedly, sustained miraculously. This knowledge will make you a more compassionate prophet, a more understanding messenger, a more effective communicator of divine love. You won't be preaching to the Assyrians from a position of self-righteousness, but from a position of shared need for divine mercy. With a final, massive contraction that involves the creature's entire digestive system, you're expelled from your aquatic sanctuary onto dry land. The transition is gentler than you expected, as if even this final moment is being divinely managed to ensure your safe return to the terrestrial world. You land on what feels like sand, still covered in the protective fluids that sustained you during your underwater sojourn. You lie on the beach for a moment, breathing air that tastes impossibly sweet after your time breathing liquid. The sensation is overwhelming. The texture of air in your lungs feels thin and insubstantial after the rich, nurturing liquid that sustained you for so long. Each breath brings with it the sense of the terrestrial world's salt spray, seaweed, warm sand, growing plants, the complex mixture of odors that speaks of life above the waves. The sun feels warm on your skin in ways you never noticed before your oceanic education. The heat penetrates not just your flesh, but something deeper, warming parts of your soul that had grown cold during your time in the depths. The light itself seems more vibrant, more alive, more significant than it ever did when you took it for granted in your normal life. The simple sensation of lying on solid ground seems miraculous after floating in liquid suspension for so long. The weight of your own body, the pressure of sand against your back, the stability of lying on something that doesn't move with biological rhythms. All of it feels like luxury beyond description. You've gained a new appreciation for the simple gifts of terrestrial existence that you never noticed when they were your constant reality. Your skin, still covered with traces of the protective fluids that sustained you during your underwater sojourn, feels different in the air, more sensitive to temperature and texture, more aware of every breeze and touch. Your time in the liquid environment has heightened your sensory awareness in ways that make the normal world seem more vivid, more immediate, more precious than it ever was before. Your muscles, strengthened and toned by your time in the creature's therapeutic environment, feel powerful and responsive as you gradually sit up and begin to test your mobility on land. The transition from liquid suspension to terrestrial movement requires adjustment, but the adjustment feels natural, as if your body has been prepared for this moment by the same divine power that sustained you in the depths. As you gradually sit up and look around, you see that you're on a beach somewhere along the Mediterranean coast. The shoreline stretches in both directions, empty except for the marks left by your dramatic arrival. The great creature that housed you has already disappeared beneath the waves, its mission accomplished, its divine appointment fulfilled. You watch the water where it vanished, feeling a strange mixture of gratitude and loss as your miraculous sanctuary returns to the depths from which it came. You're alone on the shore, transformed by your impossible journey, ready to fulfill the calling you once tried to escape. But this solitude feels different from the isolation you experienced during your lowest moments in the creature's belly. This is the solitude of preparation, of being set apart for a specific purpose, of standing at the threshold of a mission that will define the rest of your life. The beach around you shows signs of the supernatural events that brought you here. The sand where you landed bears marks that suggest the presence of something far larger than any normal sea creature. Pools of the miraculous liquid that sustained you during your underwater education glisten in the sunlight, gradually evaporating but leaving behind crystalline residues that hint at their otherworldly properties. Your clothing, which had been deteriorating in the creature's digestive environment, has somehow been restored during your expulsion. The robes that were becoming thin and fragile in the biological acids are now whole, clean, and stronger than they were when you first put them on. Even your sandals, which you thought had been lost when you sank into the Mediterranean, are back on your feet, secured and comfortable, as if they had never been removed. The word of the Lord comes to you again, just as it did before your flight to Tarshish, but this time you hear it with different ears. Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it the message that I tell you. The command is the same, but everything else has changed. You have changed. Your understanding of divine love, divine power, divine grace has been revolutionized by your time in the depths. The voice that speaks this command carries with it all the authority it had before, but now you also hear undertones of love, patience, and mercy that you missed the first time. This isn't just a divine order issued by a distant sovereign to a reluctant subject. This is an invitation to participate in a mission of mercy extended by a God who has just demonstrated his willingness to go to extraordinary lengths to preserve and prepare his servants. The message you're commanded to deliver will be the same words of judgment. and call to repentance that you were originally commissioned to speak. But the heart that delivers those words will be different, informed by personal experience of divine grace, tempered by knowledge of what it means to be saved when you deserve destruction, enriched by understanding of God's love for even the most rebellious and violent people. You understand now that your message to Nineveh won't just be about their need for repentance. It will also be about the possibility of divine mercy, the reality of second chances, the hope of forgiveness, even for those who seem beyond redemption. You'll be speaking to them not as someone who has never failed, but as someone who has experienced the depths of divine love, pursuing him even in his rebellion. The authority behind your words won't come from your own righteousness or courage, but from the miraculous experience that brought you to this beach. When you tell the Assyrians that God can deliver them from destruction, you'll be speaking from personal knowledge of divine deliverance. When you promise them that repentance can lead to mercy, you'll be offering them the same grace that preserved you in the belly of the great fish. You stand up on legs that feel strange after your weightless existence, but strong and capable of carrying you wherever God sends you. The muscles that were maintained and strengthened during your aquatic sojourn respond with power and coordination that surprises you. Your body has been prepared for the journey ahead, optimized for the challenges that await you in Nineveh. You brush the sand from your restored clothing and orient yourself toward the direction of Nineveh. The great Assyrian capital lies somewhere to the northeast, a journey of many days through terrain that holds its own dangers and challenges. But those earthly perils seem manageable now, after surviving the impossible depths of the Mediterranean Sea in the belly of a creature that shouldn't exist. This time, you're not running away from God's calling. You're walking toward it with steady determination and clear purpose. Your steps carry you away from the beach where you were delivered, away from the Mediterranean waters that nearly claimed your life, toward the mission that defines your identity as a prophet of the living God. You carry with you the knowledge that there is nowhere you can go to escape divine love, and no rebellion too great for divine grace to overcome. The great fish that housed you has returned to the depths, but the lessons learned in its belly will guide every step of the journey ahead. You have experienced divine mercy in the most impossible circumstances, and now you're ready to offer that same possibility of mercy to the most unlikely people. Your education in the belly of the great fish is complete. Your real prophetic ministry is just beginning. The man who walks away from this beach toward Nineveh carries within him the memory of breathing liquid in the depths of the sea, sustained by miracles he could never have imagined, loved by a God whose grace reaches even into the belly of a great fish.